friends. We're going to tell it to pass. We're going to say, get thee behind me. We're going to turn from it and turn towards something else. This is a continuation of the conversations that we have been having. And I am so very grateful for the inspiration of the song and for the words of Dr. Johnny Coleman. Thank you so much for bringing those here today. Because the combination of the song and what we heard about imagination is that here's what I want you to know. Here's what I want you to hear. You are not a victim. You are not a victim of anything that's happening, of any storm that we have conjured up in this human experience in the mind that believed that it was separate from God and made a mess. Those are the storms that we don't need to beat ourselves up for. But the storm, mind you, represents the conditions of mind, the conditions of fear, the conditions of separateness, the condition of othering and otherness, and the forgetfulness and the falling asleep to the idea that back of the multiplicity and the diversity that comes forth and from the one source, the one supply, that we are all one, that we are all one in this consciousness, and furthermore, oh my goodness gracious, man, we are brothers and sisters. We are all collectively the offspring of the father-mother presence, the mother-father presence. You see, we even release the idea of the patriarchal system here. We even begin to release some of that terminology to know that there's only one, and that the father and the mother are one, both necessary, the divine masculine, the divine feminine, that they come together in oneness to create each and every one of us as the one, as Christ. It is said that God is forever begetting the only begotten. Goddess is forever begetting the only begotten. And that's the Christ. Put the hand before the heart and say, Christ in me, my hope of glory. That Christ is my divine identity. That Christ is the I am of my being. Take a breath here. As Christ, you can repeat this too. As Christ, each of us, I abide in perfect safety beyond the storms. As Christ, I release the storm. I release anxiety. I release otherness. As Christ, I breathe in and out the love of God. Now, why is that? Because we are the love of God. We are the divine extension and expression of love. And look around the room. I mean, really, like move your head and look around the room and see the diversity, the multiplicity, the unique and divine expressions. And then if you have the opportunity to look into the body eyes of an individual who is next to you, who is near you, soften the eyes and see beyond to the oneness that unites us now and always. I am what thou art. Say to a brother or sister, I am what thou art. Thou art what I am. Holy and beloved children of God. One family in unity. So I say thank you, Mother, Father, God, that this is already so, that this is the truth of our being, and that by being able to claim and declare that the storms of our life become still is us stepping into our power. Now, one of my very favorite teachings is this, and part of it's embraced with this idea that love embraces all things, that here in unity, we're not a teaching of avoidance. Now, you might walk in here and think, wow, man, they're just so happy all the time, that they never have any storms in their lives. They must be charmed in some way. But the truth of the matter is that our happiness and joy actually comes from having faced the storm, having looked at the storm, not running away from it, not hiding from it, but allowing love to embrace it. Because if I created the storm, there is some good information in that storm for me. There is some really good information. And as Dr. Coleman said, if I got an image maker here in me, I'm the one who projected that image out, am I not? And so I'm really just looking at an unloved aspect of myself. I'm just looking at an aspect of myself that I pushed away outside of love's embrace, outside of understanding. Or perhaps it's just something that served me once at one level of consciousness, but no longer serves me now and has become a storm. And that the storm is actually for us and not against us. Take a breath here. How can death be for us? How can loss be for us? How can that be? What I can say to you is that always on the other side of me embracing those things that look like deaths, those things that look like loss, those things that look like change, those things that look like threat, oh my goodness gracious, those are the most fertile opportunities in our spiritual awakening. That's the grist for the mill. That's the sand in the oyster that becomes the pearl. That's the visitor that comes to the guest house and knocks upon your door and is there to clear us away for some new delight. How you gonna get that message if you don't embrace it a little bit? If you don't invite it in for tea? If you don't sit across from it and say, hey, what's your message? What have you got here for me? And how did I create you? What thought system did I partake of? Did I imagine? Did I conceive? Did I believe that would make my picture maker outpicture and project that storm? You see, we can hear, oh, well, change your thinking, change your life, right? We hear that. That's a catchphrase here in New Thought. How many of you had tried to change your thinking? Sometimes it's not so easy, is it? Because we've been thinking the thoughts time and time and time and time and time and time again. And if thoughts are things, and those thoughts become the matter from which I'm imagining things, and then I'm not only thinking the thoughts, but I'm having an image of it, it's pretty darn convincing, isn't it? And then you have brothers and sisters in a whole world all doing the same thing at once. And then guess what? They report it on the news. So then you turn it on and you think, oh, well, it must be true. The biggest thing that we can do at this juncture in our spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment is to begin to question our own thoughts. Begin to question your thinking, my beloveds. Just because you think something, and just because you now feel something about it doesn't make it true. We're in a very odd point in our human evolution. I'm not even sure evolution is the right word. Human devolution? Or stagnation, doesn't matter. We're at a very interesting thing where truth and facts are very convoluted, and it seems very confusing to us. But what I can say and tell you is that your answer, my answer, is never going to be out there. You're the image maker. We're the image maker. We're the ones choosing the beliefs that we are going to have our faith in. And that is nothing to bat an eye at. That's nothing to take lightly. Because that which we have faith in and that which we image becomes either the storms or the heaven of our experience. Question your thoughts. Question what you think you see. Question what you think you believe. My favorite way, I introduce myself a whole lot of different ways. I even change my name from time to time. For a while, my very favorite thing under my signature was a lover of what is. A lover of what is, including the storms. I'm going to love it all. Because love is going to embrace all things. And when I allow all things, I get to learn and see where my areas of forgiveness are. I'm going to forgive it all. And it is only in this way that I can transcend it. It's only in this way that I can then have the opportunity to choose again. To change my thinking and change my life. To change the images and utilize my imaginative faculty in a different way. To believe and conceive in a different way. To achieve different results. We must be discerning. Have you ever just felt like you just don't know, though? Oh. And then people come to me when they don't know. And I'm like, I don't know for myself. How am I going to know for you? Right? It's a lot of pressure. But here's the little trick, is that I always just get to direct everyone, including myself, back to in here. We're continuing a conversation about unity basic principles. And when there is a storm, a condition, an event that is an effect, something out there in the world, somewhere along the way, we individually and collectively have mistaken storms, conditions, events, news, people, places, things, all of that, the landscape of our lives, we have forgotten that we were the creators of it. And we give it power. How many of you look to conditions for permission for what you want to achieve? How many of you look to conditions to disqualify the things that your heart says you want? I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not qualified. All of the, what are some other ones? There could be other ones. Anybody? Too expensive. I don't have enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. Yep, not qualified. no education. Oh, what will they think? They might laugh at me. So we're looking outside of ourselves for permission. And we've got it backwards. Doesn't matter what they think. God qualifies us. We're timeless beings. We're eternal beings. We have to pause and take a breath. I've been doing it ever since I got here. Started with not knowing what was next in that order of service. Pause and take a breath. I don't know. It starts with the sense that I'm thinking René knows. It starts when I get this little edge of control or an anxiety. I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to make something happen. Separate, untethered from the source that binds us all together, from that divine intelligence. So we started our conversation in Unity Basic Principles last month. And I kept doing 1 and 2 over and over and over and over again. Guess what? I'm going to do it right now again. There's one power and one presence in the universe, God. God is present everywhere. There is nowhere where God is not. God is the source of all intelligence, all wisdom. God is for me. There is nothing, can be nothing against me. God is all there is. 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 Play around with it. Say it in different ways. God is good all the time. No force of evil opposing it. That's the fabricated storm of separation. No boogeyman, no devil, no evil. You are a precious, beloved child of this. Number 2, God is I am. I am an extension and an expression of the love of God. What God is, I am. And yet I didn't make myself. So I continuously go to the source. I continuously go to the source. The only relationship of value is my relationship with God. What about my family? What about my kids? What about my job? Only one. You really only have to focus on one thing. We're in unity. Remember that. One thing, God. That's the only relationship. Well, I don't know what that means for me, but that's your job. That's your job to sit and ask, what must God be for me? What do I want to call it? How do I want to partake of it? Do I want to light candles? How am I going to remind myself, God is I am, God is I am. And then we continue that we are creative beings like our Creator, like unto our Creator. We're meaning-making machines through our thoughts. Thoughts are things. We're image-making machines. So it's all coming from our consciousness outward. And what we do here is we affirm, meditate, and pray. And we live the truth we speak of. We become the living, breathing embodiment of the truth. And in those moments when we don't know, we ask and we pause. I personally think thinking is overrated. Tough to say in a new thought community, right? Thought's right in the word, right in the title, new thought. but we're being asked to think new thoughts. Today is Groundhog's Day. Happy Groundhog's Day. Anybody ever watched the movie, in 1993 with Bill Murray? Living that same day over and over and over and over again and again and again. How many of you feel that way? I always laugh when the same storms keep coming. It's like neon lights. It's God. It's the universe. It's the benevolence of the universe. The perfect feedback loop reflecting back to you what? You. It doesn't get any nicer than that. It really doesn't. Oh. And rather than beat ourselves up or think we're guilty or sinners, what if we just kind of thought, isn't that interesting? You mean I can get off this loop? You mean I can think a different way? Image a different thought? Believe and conceive? Here's the deal. I got to tell you something. We're talking about principles and laws. There is a quote that says, this is from Browning, Robert Browning, all's love, yet all is law. Take a breath with me here, because we're going to finish up real quick here. All is love, yet all is law. I love the love. Not too crazy about the sound of law, right? But it's benevolent. It works. Thoughts are things. Events are neutral. Storms are neutral, really. We're going to experience the consequences of them? Sure. How else will we wake up? How else will it get our attention? And when it does, we're going to join in heart and mind with all that is. And instead of thinking we know, we're going to ask, Spirit, holy and divine, what is the truth here? What am I to learn? What am I to learn? What is this showing me about myself? How is this storm loving me now? And when we begin to do that, like Bill Murray in Groundhog's Day, we begin to turn more and more to love, to loving kindness. All is love. All is love. Love is going to point the way. Law is going to make it happen. Thoughts are things. Image-making machine. When you're watching the news these days, remember the way the ego works, the way the mind of fear works, the way that the separated mind works, is it's going to operate between suspicious and vicious. It ain't love. Okay? When you begin to see that, pause. Take a breath, disengage. That's not love. Don't let fear point the way. That ego mind understands and knows thoughts are things. It's going to hijack our spiritual principles. It's cunning and baffling. It knows. It's a wily little thing, right? I mean, we made it up. We're pretty crafty, aren't we? Right? And so then this idea of going back to the beginning. We know what's in charge by the storms we see and by the heavens we experience. Begin to be about thinking about and imagining heaven, the realm of ever-expanding good. When I was a little girl, I had a brother figure who used to tease me and say, beat me up and say terrible things about me. And when I naturally was my positive self, he called me Pollyanna. Sometimes we're called that in this teaching, aren't we? Oh, you're just Pollyanna. You got to be smart. You got to, right? Well, I'm saying, let's start thinking those thoughts that seem counterintuitive to what's going on in the world. Thoughts are things. What are you thinking? Begin to question your thoughts. What are back of your thoughts? Where are they coming from? Love or fear? And I leave you with this. The student comes to the teacher, as they always do, because there's a need, there's a conflict, there's something inside going on. And it's like the student describes it as these two wolves, and they're fighting all the time. And the wise person listens to the drama and the storms and the confusion and just listens, and as the wise one always does, simply asks. When the student asks which one's going to win, which one are you feeding? That's the one that's going to win. Which thoughts are you feeding? Which images are you feeding? Do they come from love? Or do they come from fear? And that's all there is. Well, there's more, and we'll talk about more. But really, love is always going to point the way. And guess what? It's going to be your heart, and you're going to feel it. And it's going to begin to pull you in directions that might seem unwise by the world's standards. And I'm going to encourage you to follow it anyway. To follow love. So let's take a breath here. I'm here to tell you it is done as we believe. Jesus, our brother and our way shower, taught us that. It is done as we believe. It is done as we conceive. It is done as we have faith in. It is done as we imagine. That word as is important. We're about to go into our song. That word as is important. Because it's like an equal sign. It is done as you believe. What you believe is how it's done. As. And so I've invited a favorite song. Are you guys ready for it? Or?